podcast app, you'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. Talking trends and hierarchy. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. Relentless focus on their bodies. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. What do they mean by all American? Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. No sex, just titillation.
Hi.
Hi there, Dr. Pardo. How are you?
Good. Do you we 100% don't have to do this?
Oh, we 1,000% do have to do this.
Okay.
I took a hearing test today. You think it's just like a coincidence I took a hearing test while we're reading head over heels, Dr. Pardo?
Oh, that's profound. Okay, that's profound.
Profound.
Head over heels.
Absolutely.
I mean, do we want to start with your 6-word review?
Bruce is good. I am sad. That was my reaction.
I love that. Wow. Are you sad about, well, we'll get into it. Okay. Mine's gonna ruffle some feathers, unfortunately. I have 2. Okay. One is, okay, I'm gonna have to make percent into 2 words.
Okay. You can't just think of another word?
No. Okay. Here's my first 6-word review. The 1% not lived.
Huh.
And my second review is, it takes 2 to tango, bitch. We will get into it.
I'm very nervous. I don't even understand. I absolutely do not understand either one of these.
They require explaining. No, they require explaining.
But either way, consider my feathers fully ruffled. Okay.
Oh, wait, if you're a Bruce stan now, are you going to come into Bruce?
I'm not a Bruce stan. I was very moved by the text of this.
Of course, it's very moving.
It's very.
One cannot help but sort of tumble over, head over heels.
Ass
Truly.
over tea kettle, as we say in my culture. Shall we?
Cliffhanger?
A cliffhanger, of course. What a silly goose am I? Okay. Elizabeth's eyes lit on one particular couple near the pool house. I don't like the looks of that, she said, frowning. She pointed to Bruce, holding Regina in his arms. I thought you were all in favor of love, sweetheart, baby girl, bitch, slay, yes, Todd said. Love, yes, but not what Bruce is up to. I don't think he knows what love means. All he knows is what makes him feel good. Girl, Regina doesn't seem to be complaining. Oh, she thinks he really cares for her, and she's completely falling for him. I just wish there was some way I could protect her from him. Todd smiled. He knew his beard girlfriend too well and realized she wouldn't give up until she had gotten through to Regina. Bitch, if anyone could come to the rescue, I have a feeling it's you, 100, he said lightly, drawing her back in his arms. Elizabeth eyed the couple over her shoulder, shaking her head with concern. I wish I could think so, but I have a feeling Regina Morrow may be in for big trouble. Will loving Bruce bring Regina happiness or heartache? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 18, head over heels.
Okay.
I have to say, I've never felt straighter than when I was like, wait, what gay slang can I even use? I don't know what the kids say.
Literally. Wait. Okay. 2 things. Number
Yes,
one, I'm so
Mama.
glad you have finally sort of come into your truth with just fully committing to the Todd gay voice.
Thank you.
And to the listeners, let me just sort of translate that. Basically, what's going on is we got Liz, right, talking to Todd, her gay boyfriend, who's not, according to the text, actually gay, but we believe him to be, about snuggling up between Regina Morrow, the new wonderful girl in town who is rich but nice and has a hearing impairment, and Bruce, who is rich but not nice. And she is telling Todd, I don't like the looks of this.
I was sure Bruce was playing her. I was sure Bruce was evil. I was sure this book would contain several trigger warnings, or would need to contain several trigger warnings and several sexual assault things. So I was very nervous, trepidatious. So I went in with one eye open. And let me just tell you, that dreamboat Bruce, he shut both my eyes and lulled me to sleep with his newfound love.
Wow. Okay.
I think, wow, wow, wow. Spoiler alert. Wow, 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 wow. The other thing is that I have had spoiled for me that Regina Morrow dies after using cocaine one time. And because Bruce is rich and evil, I was sure they were going to go to a party, he was going to do cocaine, and she was going to die, which I thought was going to be really interesting because it was going to be like head over heels is her love for him, but it also kind of references the way that she gets like turned around and then eventually dead.
And so I've not confirmed that particular thing is happening to Robert. I did say, and when the Morrow estate was referenced as Xanadu, I made a cocaine reference, and Robert sort of connected some dots to mean, okay, this certain thing is going to happen to Regina. From my perspective, I have not confirmed such a thing. Robert is assuming this, and I was aware that you were anticipating that that was going to happen in this book. So I was very curious what your just emotional like journey was with it, going in, sort of steeling yourself for a death that did not arrive.
I was very, very nervous. I have grown to love and feel very protective over Regina, and not listeners in a paternalistic way because she is deaf. Thank you. But just because like I love her and I care about her and I want her to do well. And so I'm very nervous about her death. And so, yeah, I was very, very skeptical and nervous. But I think actually pretty early on, I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like it would be a real tonal shift if this were the cocaine death moment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just because of like whatever.
And by the way, I'm not confirming that. I just
of
need
course.
you to
Yeah, I believe me, I understand that. There's nothing I understand better in my entire life. I think pretty early on, we kind of see that Bruce actually is a good guy, at least to Regina, and does seem to have changed. I'm sure you're going to blow up my theory about that, and there's all sorts of subtext and stuff where he has no change. But,
not really.
Okay.
To quote you, shall we to the plot summary?
Yes, please. I mean, if I'm starting, I'm just going to say Bruce and Regina are the new couple in school, and it seems like things are going really well, and it's actually really, really sweet and beautiful, and I just love, and I'm so happy for them.
Yeah, but a lot of people around, including Elizabeth and Jessica, find it hard to believe that Bruce's apparent kind of instant personality change of suddenly being a kind of normal, like reasonably kind person is for real. And so the sort of general thought around the community is like, oh gosh, he's gonna quote unquote break Regina's heart. Jess gets in a bet with Lila over it, and then Jess schemes to break up Bruce and Regina, and he goes to Switzerland.
Yeah, and the Switzerland of it all is that there is an experimental new treatment that could restore Regina's hearing. And Regina's parents say, this is such good news, you should go to Switzerland and get your hearing back. It'll just be a year. And Regina's like, I'm definitely not going. I love Sweet Valley. I feel normal here. I'm happy here. I'm happy with Bruce. I'm not going. And then because Jessica breaks them up, she then decides to go.
This book is really complicated because there's a lot of fucking stuff going on, which is the whole sort of like device of what's going on at school that like moves all this stuff forward, and like is this quote unquote carnival. This quote unquote carnival is to raise money for the like wing at the hospital for kids with disabilities. And Elizabeth is the quote unquote head of the committee, which is absolutely giving her the thrill of her actual life. So a bunch of nonsense happens vis-a-vis at carnival. But the thing is, the story is really crazy about the Switzerland thing. And like, we really need, like, that's one of the things that really frustrates me about this book is the Switzerland storyline. Like, this is one of those books where, and so is the next one.
Sorry. No spoilers.
But like, where there's like, it's giving chemistry test vibes. Remember the chemistry test?
Yes. Yes.
I don't know.
She stays out all night, and so she can't study, and she pins it on her.
Okay, so then it would have been book 5 all night long. Like the chemistry test, which I don't actually know what book it happened in, but this book and the next book have these storylines that get unnecessarily complicated to where you get to a certain point in the twists and turns of the narrative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you get to a certain plot development. Some chapters in, some new information happens or some new plot happens, right? And you're like, I see how this turn is going to serve the story. And in that, what we should just, I think, call chemistry test storylines, you get to that point, and then there's like 4 more weird random turns that take it to some whole other place that you're like, well, I know I'm like philosophically randomly posted this, like we didn't have to go, or just random, like the Switzerland thing is crazy and makes no sense. We have to talk about it anyhow.
I think that probably covers the plot summary though, yeah?
Yeah, you want to see the cover?
I want to see the cover.
Hold on.
Oh, how fancy free. So this is Regina or Regina with Bruce Patman. It seems to be is it a different Bruce Patman than the first Bruce Patman?
Nope. I mean, his features and his face and his hair are the same. There's, I think, certain differences that we can certainly talk about, but yeah, it's the same Bruce.
He looks great. He looks happy for once. Maybe that's what it is. Regina and Bruce are embracing, and it is just, it's for me, it has the feeling of like they were in a conversation with just the two of them at a party or at a dance, and someone has come up and been like, oh, I'm taking a picture of everybody. And they're like, okay. And so like Regina, it's like, it feels like Regina is throwing herself onto Bruce. It just feels like we're looking in on a private moment of Regina's. Like this, Regina looks so happy and so cute and so young, and I love it.
I'm like questioning everything about myself and my life and my identity and my brain right now, because we have such different reactions to everything about this book. It's hilarious. I was expecting this conversation to be so different. Like, first of all, I can't believe you haven't commented on her beauty. Let us just please recall that she was on the cover of Ingenue.
If I could ever for a second forget, as if Lila would let me forget she was on the cover of Ingenue.
No, but like this is literally the girl who's like cheekbones famously, like she's so gorgeous. She's so statuesque.
She's stopping traffic.
And I just need you to see this girl. Is this even statuesque?
I think she looks pretty.
She does not have a neck. I wrote in huge letters what happened to her neck. And let me tell you something, Robert. In future books,
does she have neck trauma?
She's pictured on the cover with she's actually gorgeous. There's future books where it's like she looks completely different and she looks gorgeous. And it's like, in my mind, that's Regina. When I think of Regina, I don't think of this. Where's her signature widow's peak? The other thing is, a huge part of the description of her and Nicholas is that they both have these full heads of flowing hair. Yeah. Her hair looks like it's thinning. And I must ask myself, and I wrote down, when she goes to Switzerland, is she also getting hair transplant surgery? Because her hair, look, it's like they ran out of marker or something. It's not good. It really bothers me. Her hair's supposed to be flowing and she has no neck. Can I tell you my theory about it?
Is it related to Tyra Banks and America's Next Top Model? Because it should be. They're obsessed with whether your neck is.
You wouldn't be happy with this.
No, Tyra would be pissed.
She'd be disqualified. A model should know her angle. So even if she's just being photographed at a little party, where's her neck? And I'm not saying it's her fault, but here's what I think happened. I've done some analysis of this cover, okay?
Okay.
I'm so bothered by her necklessness.
Yeah.
And I had to ask myself why.
Oh, God.
So from a perspective of drawing and artistry, like what happened here? And I have a theory. You want to know my theory?
More than anything.
Why are you laughing?
It's just like, it's so funny that we are at a point where we're like, she has no neck. And I thought to myself, why does she have no neck? So I have a theory. Like, that's just like truly unhinged.
No, that's not what I mean. I'm not saying it's meaningful. I mean, literally, what happened to their pencil in their hand? Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Can't wait to learn more.
So here's my theory. Because another thing that is very strange that you probably can't pick up on over Zoom is that, to me, she and Bruce look like mismatched in a way of colors. Like he almost looks like sepia tone.
Yeah, I see that.
It might not be clear here, but there's something feels sort of cut and paste about it. And my feeling is this. When this picture was originally drawn, I think she did have a neck. And I think her head was somewhere over here. And she had a long, nice Regina neck. And then I think what happened was someone looked at the cover and they said, this doesn't signify enough her dependence on him and her sort of neediness and childlikeness. And he's very much to me looks like a father. In this cover, we have his little belted chinos. We have his big, strong arm, the way he's holding her. To me, it feels very much a father and a child. And the way she's sort of clinging to him feels a little bit needy. But anyway, so yeah, I think what happened was originally her head was up here and she did have a neck.
Mhm.
And then someone looked at it and said, you have to make her look a little more kind of not his equal or sort of more dependent or in a more childlike dynamic to him. And so they were in such a hurry. And plus, it's back in the 80s. They don't have digital. They're literally cutting out a piece of paper and putting it behind. So I think what happened was they literally just cut out her head and just sort of moved it down a couple inches and put it behind her shoulder. And that was the fastest. And they were in a hurry on a deadline. That's what they had to do. Because I can't think of another explanation. Can you? This is
Yes.
criminal. To do this to a gorgeous statuesque beauty, it's not fair. It's not right.
The other thing I did notice.
Plus, she doesn't have a chin. No, she doesn't get a neck and she doesn't even get a chin. It just makes she's chinless.
She is chinless.
I did do a sort of, like I said, comparison to how Bruce looks on Playing with Fire. I think, like you said, I think it's quite similar. It's just a bit of a gentler expression. More like his eyes are less sort of intense, maybe more open or relaxed, and just seems, like sort of nice and relaxed. But yeah, like I think we'd be remiss to not talk about the placement of his arm, right? Because it was so on Playing with Fire. And of course, we've honored this in our cover image with Robert's arm around me, but we talked
so
about
much of a strangulation.
Yeah, we talked about it in Playing with Fire, how his arm around Jessica seemed a bit threatening. And what a contrast to see him so kind of gently holding Regina. Do you want to guess the taglines?
Something or heartbreak. Something good or heartbreak. Honeymoon or heartbreak or something like that.
Honeymoon or heartbreak. How fun.
Oh, no, she likes.
Wonderful, but no.
And something like, has Bruce really changed so much? No way.
Not exactly, but very close. Can Bruce Patman really fall in love? Very nice.
What's the other one? Do you want to ask?
I mean, do you want to give it one more? I bet you could get it. You could get this one.
You think?
You could get this one.
Is Regina in over her head?
No.
The disappointment that you just gave me.
Do opposites attract? I have some truths I would like to speak about the title and the headline and the taglines.
Okay. I'm ready for your truth.
Opposites attract, I think, is interesting because, like, the reason why one of my 6-word reviews was the 1% not lived is because I think, like, we must discuss the absolute, like, taken for grantedness of this idea that Bruce and Regina are opposites and the, like, constant reinforcement of that when they are literally very, 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 very similar. They have very similar lives. They are 2 of the 3 richest families in the town. And I think that calling it head over heels, we must ask, who is it referring to?
Of course.
And we must say, what does this mean? Head over heels, literally what it means is your head goes down, your heels goes up, right? So it's like you're succumbing to your heart. It's not rational. It's so powerful, kind of falling in love, right? But the idea that, like, Bruce and Regina is a irrational pairing when it is actually so much serving the interests of their oligarchic power. It is the most rational pairing from this perspective. And I'm not saying I don't support it. I'm not saying I don't ship it or love so much about their relationship and tenderness with each other and the development of Bruce. Like, I think they can both be true, but I just really do think the Morrows love to be seen as, like, low key and, like, different kind of rich people. They have the biggest mansion in town. If they're so low key, why do they need that much space? If they're so low key, why do they need an English butler? Like, we must not erase the absolute, like, conspicuous, like, wealth hoarding and whatever. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, she may have a different personality than Bruce, but the idea that it's just so taken for granted that they're opposites pokes at me, because it's like they're just these, like, white rich people who have very similar lifestyles and for whose families it would make a lot of sense in a very rational way for them to get together. So the idea that this isn't somehow, like, throwing away of what makes sense in the world and, like, let's just go with our hearts, it's like that annoys me. And I think that Regina is not exactly like Robin, but I think she's underestimated. I think she sometimes strategically essentializes herself, and I think she's conflicted about it. I think that Regina's biggest like trigger, or her thing that bothers her the most, is when people think that she doesn't realize what's going on and they sort of make a fool right in front of her and they think she doesn't see. I think that's a trigger for her because we know that when she grew up, she was teased and her disability and everything else, right? Elizabeth's always talking about how naive she is and she's so sheltered apparently, which I need to talk about that because what does that exactly mean? But like this idea that she like doesn't understand who Bruce really is when she meets him is very suspicious to me because at some point in the book, Todd says, well, if anyone could turn that toad into a prince, it's Regina. If the woman shows him enough goodness, she can turn him from this beast into like a kindness. But what that means is that when she encountered him, he was that beast, pretty transparently so. And she understands that because she says stuff later in the book like, oh no, he's just gonna dump me and treat me like shit like he did all the other girls. He knows. So I think like she knows who he is more than people give her credit for. And I think there's a lot of instances in this book of people thinking she's not realizing stuff and us seeing that she actually does know stuff that they think she's not getting.
So I do just want to present like the very briefest of, I think I so appreciate your kind of Marxist reading of the text and the class dynamics that are there and the ways in which they are so similar. I think to a casual, kind of more stupid reader like me, I think at this point in the texts, before we see them together, we got a glimpse of them last book. Before we really get into them this book, I think Regina has been presented as such an unbelievably kind, sweet, thoughtful, lovely person. She's been presented as down to earth. She's been presented as humble. She's been presented as like kind of lovely in every way. And Bruce has been presented as the opposite of that. Regina is warm and kind and loving. Bruce is an absolute monster, dickhead, terrible. We see Bruce
Then why does she love him? If he's so bad and she's good and she values goodness, then why does she not care about badness?
I think there is a reading where she is able to separate the fact that he has basically been an arrogant fuckboy to everybody else, and she is able to see that with her, he is different.
That's called narcissism. She actually likes that. She's attracted to it. The fact that he has this reputation of treating all these girls bad and she could be the one to change him, she's on board with that.
I'm definitely gonna need some textual evidence for that. Do you want to start talking about the book? So we open, and I think this actually is interesting to me. We open with Jessica and Elizabeth talking to each other. Elizabeth waking Jessica up in Jessica's messy room. And for me, it was just a little surprising because last book we opened with Caroline Pierce's interiority. And I assumed this would be a Regina and Bruce heavy book. And so it's like, oh, why are we starting with Jess and Elizabeth?
Because Jess is the one who is head over heels.
I'm interested in exploring that more with you. I again just want to call our attention ever so briefly to because these books could be read as standalones. So we get like the quickest sketch of how they're different. The resemblance between the twins was only skin deep. Elizabeth, who wrote the Eyes and Ears column for the Oracle, the student newspaper for Sweet Valley High, wanted to be a serious writer one day. That was why, as she often explained to Todd Wilkins, her steady boyfriend, she tried her hardest to be objective, organized, good-natured, and fair as possible. That was how Elizabeth's friends described her. Jessica, on the other hand, never planned more than one day at a time, though she threw herself into every project and every new relationship with astounding energy.
About the morning shuffle.
Sure.
Elizabeth admires that Alice looks pretty. She's wearing a dress and she talks about having a client over. And I just had some, they're tiny, but just tiny signs that could support Alice getting up to something during the day. And let me just say, and I'm not saying there's a strong case for it, but a couple
any case, a whisper of a case, I'm intrigued.
So first we have Elizabeth, and Elizabeth frequently remarks, Alice, mom, you look pretty today. Like that's not really an unusual thing, but I'm just saying we have it. And her mom's wearing a flowered dress. I don't know that flowered dress is necessarily like, that seems a little bit special occasion for Alice. She says a client's coming over, right? And then we get Alice, before she goes upstairs, she puts on her makeup. I've not heard of Alice putting on makeup before. Then we get this. When Elizabeth asks her for the car because there's going to be a meeting of the carnival committee, The carnival committee? Alice Wakefield looked blank for a minute. To raise money for handicapped children, Elizabeth reminded her. The specific inclusion of the fact that Alice doesn't remember what she's talking about, and then when she's reminded, says, now I remember, letting us know that Elizabeth had already told her about it, but she forgot, combined with the pretty dress and the makeup, made me say, why include that? My normal reaction would be, look at Alice being a bad mom. She never knows what the fuck's going on in her kids' lives. But the fact that they include that with those makes me think, huh. And then the other thing is, she's like, okay, well, you guys are definitely not gonna be home till night, right? She's like, you can take the car, I don't need it till tonight. And then she's like, okay, I guess I'll see you tonight. Like, not before. So that's all I gotta say.
Can I ask, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, are you thinking she's like engaging in an extramarital affair?
Affair, yeah.
Because the other option is, of course, sex worker.
Yeah, I guess
house.
I didn't really consider that. It's certainly possible.
I love it. I love a double life. Anytime that we can get a little bit of a secret.
Because what else is what's the other reading of her looking blankly, not remembering, and then being like, oh yeah, now I remember. Like, why include that? Literally.
She's a bad mom.
But so now they're like trying to tell us she's a bad mom. Like, that doesn't seem consistent with the perspective of the actual book, because like previously we had, ever since the motorcycle accident, Alice is paying more attention to Liz and she's more worried about her and stuff like that.
I agree. In that morning shuffle, we also get Ned, who of course is.
Sorry,
I don't think there's milk. There's orange juice.
There's milk. I got
milk. Is there milk this time? It's orange. Oh, something else I thought was strange was Alice is mixing orange juice in a glass pitcher.
So many questions about the orange juice in the pitcher. Is it like that? Remember that frozen orange juice where it'd be like a can in the freezer?
Oh, maybe it's from concentrate. Maybe she serves her daughters orange juice from concentrate.
But here's the thing. Then Jessica grabs a fresh orange from the table. So I think, well, wait a minute. First, my thought was, why is Jess taking an orange, which involves you got to now peel it? Whenever you got fresh OJ, just drink a glass of OJ. And then I thought, well, maybe it's not fresh. Well, she isn't. I don't know. But maybe she was stirring to get the pulp around, or maybe it was fresh squeezed and she was stirring and she put some ice cubes. I don't know.
The use of the word mixing to me is very telling and was very strange.
No, I completely agree with you. But then, okay, girls, Alice said, bringing a carton of milk to the table. So we don't see them drink it there. But then, of course, there's more milk later, which is, oh my God.
Spoiler alert.
I just gotta say it. We will get into it. But my long-held theory of Winston's very strange relationship with food, let's just say the plot thickens. The milk thickens. All right.
I missed the Starch King. Did you flag Ned Wakefield, who's hurrying into the kitchen? And then did you flag, he says to Elizabeth teasingly, where's your better half?
Oh, I know. And I wasn't going to get into it because there's too much, but yes, I did.
It's just such a weird, you say that to a married couple. You don't say that to a pair of twins.
Well, wait a minute. Don't you, excuse me. No, it's a call. Okay. For me, my thought was it's a callback to a few books ago when Stephen said to Jess, where's your better half? And she said, I bet you never say to Liz about me, her better half. Remember we talked about that? And then she meets Nicholas and we said it's a contrast of good brother, bad brother. So I was thinking, well, now we've got someone actually is calling Jess better half, but he's doing it as a joke. So is the joke that she's actually the worst half? I don't know. Or is it the joke that he thinks every single fucking thing he says is funny?
Both.
Now I'm mad at Liz about something, which is they're driving to school and Liz says, Jess, do you have any good ideas for the carnival? And Jess says, I don't suppose you trade me a few pointers on my history paper for some carnival ideas. And Liz says, you're right, I wouldn't. And I'm like, why? Those are equal labor. Like, why, if she's asking Jessica for help on her project, which is her carnival, why can't Jessica ask her for help on her homework? And it's not like Jessica's asking her to write the paper for her. There's a million ethical ways that Elizabeth could use her well-documented writing skills to support her sister, to make a plan or craft an outline or an objective or whatever, or just a way to start for this paper. It's like, why is she saying no as if it's like Jessica was saying some crazy request?
I thought it was really shitty. And she goes on to be like, come on, Jess, we've got less than 2 weeks to get this thing organized and we really need some help. Besides, it's such a good cause. The money we raise will be donated to a special fund at Fallon Memorial Hospital to help handicapped children. Like, making it seem like Jess is a bad person for focusing on her schoolwork instead of helping her sister out with this harebrained and stupid carnival idea.
I totally agree. And you know what Jess should say to her?
Go fuck yourself. Oh, sorry.
Because listen to this. Oh, and this makes my blood boil. Nearly a few paragraphs earlier, when they're still at home,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Jessica says, how am I supposed to do a 15-page history paper? Like, and Elizabeth is teasing her, well, maybe she'll work on it during the day or whatever. And she's like, how am I supposed to fit that in? And Elizabeth goes, yeah, history teachers should be better organized. They really should schedule homework assignments around dates and cheerleading practice, which is so insulting to Jessica, of course, constantly demeaning her. But then she says Jess that she needs help because she only has 2 weeks to get organized. Jess should say, well, your lack of planning is not my emergency.
Exactly.
Because Elizabeth, who's demeaning Jessica for not, and so sarcastic how she could be overwhelmed with work she has to do, it has no problem saying, well, I only have 2 weeks and I need help with this. And the whole book, she's fucking freaking out about the carnival, but she can't help her sister. She's such a good student. She can't give her sister a couple pointers.
She also says, when she's talking about the carnival to her mom, it's not a real carnival. So it's like, then calm down and help your sister, you mean girl.
In this book, we have multiple instances, and I do have a rant on it. We have multiple instances of these like overinflated student roles for like
Sure.
various, and like one is Liz absolutely blowing this whole carnival like thing out of proportion, and like her like responsibility is this fucking stupid carnival. And then the second, of course, later in the book is this huge nonsense around Bruce and Ken are campaigning to be elected the president of the student committee for the town Centennial celebration. And this is like supposed to be this high stakes thing. I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we're driving to school, Bruce pulls up his Porsche next to them. And the first time we see him, he leaps out of the car and opens the door for Regina. Jessica immediately is like, ugh, I wonder what he's up to with this Prince Charming act. And yet Elizabeth says, that's a strange thing. I've never seen Bruce act this way before. He seems to be killing Regina with kindness. He even meets her after every class so he can have a few minutes with her. Oh.
We have all the like Todd warmth signifiers in this book all together, which is it's a warm hug. He loves to kiss the tip and top of things with her. He loves to kiss the tip of her nose and the top of her head.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a lot of that in this book. And then we also get the coffee brown eyes. Oh, and then Todd says we should call Bruce and Regina Beauty and the Beast. He kisses the top of her head, and they hope that the beast doesn't break Beauty's heart.
Elizabeth says to Todd, I hope she doesn't get hurt. You have to remember, not all guys are as wonderful as you are. And Todd says back, I never forget it for a second. Todd spends a lot of time thinking about what guys would be like if he were dating them. Right? Give me another reading of that. I never forget it for a second that not all guys are as wonderful as me. I think about how wonderful guys are all the time, every second of the day. And I'm always thinking about how not every guy is as wonderful as me because I'm always thinking about guys.
Okay, we got to talk about the food play with Winston in chapter 2.
Obviously.
He's obsessed with food. Chapter 2 starts, don't you think the carnival committee deserves better food? Winston jokes, spearing a hot dog with his fork, da, 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 da. Okay, and then we have his compulsive counting of milk cartons to fire the drops of milk from the milk carton at the person next to him. He does this multiple times.
It's gross.
Okay. Then for the carnival, he suggests that he's going to have pies thrown in his face. Okay. This previous book, he was doing competitive binge eating. And I just want to say we have additional evidence for his food situation. And I want to add to my diagnosis for him. I think he also has some kind of ADHD.
Oh, yeah.
The constant like pounding of he's extremely disruptive. Like he's constantly doing antics to disrupt the flow of normal conversation in a way that I would think is not developmentally appropriate. But I'd love to get your take as we go through this carnival meeting.
I didn't really flag it, but okay. Yeah, I mean, he seems a little frantic.
Olivia says Bruce seems like a whole new person when he answered the phone when she was calling his house for Roger. He even asked Olivia how she was.
And more to the point, he listened when I told him, which I think gets back to when in Playing with Fire, when Bruce and like Jessica was trying to talk to Bruce about her problems and he wasn't interested in listening at all. I'm just now having this reading that maybe you've been having the whole time, which now seems silly, but like, is Jessica breaking Regina and
Yes.
Bruce up because she's jealous because she couldn't fix him and Regina can?
Yes, Robert. When it talks about the stakes are so high. It's not about the term paper. The stakes for Jessica is it is too hurtful that this could be real and sustained. That Bruce could, because then it means why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't I enough that I could be the one to get Bruce to love and that he could want to spend time with me, right? Yeah, welcome to the Roman analysis. No, but truly, like, because, and I think that's what's so great about this term paper play is it's another, not exactly a power play, but I think with her and Lila, they're each invested in the breakup of Regina and Bruce for completely different reasons. And it's so funny to watch them talk about it because they just ignore each other and talk about their own thing, which is Jessica likes Regina. She has no problem with Regina. She thinks she's cool, right? Lila has beef with Regina because she's competitive and threatened by her, right? So Lila wants to take Regina down. And she keeps talking about like, so when they're talking about like, oh, this could never last, and Lila being like, yeah, Regina's so boring. Why could he like her? And her clothes suck. And then Jessica's like, well, I think her clothes are cool, but he's such a psycho. How could she like him? And he definitely wants to stay in this, and he's definitely not being authentic or whatever, right? And it's like, yeah, those are the stakes. And I think where we see this demonstrated the most is for me on page 17, which is a couple of pages into the chapter. Lila's talking. Kara told me Bruce has gone completely crazy over her. Lila confided, watching Jessica carefully to gauge her reaction. He takes her absolutely everywhere. Kara says he can't stand to be away from her for even a minute. Jessica flinched. Lila knew that one of the sorest points between Jessica and Bruce had been that he tried to get out of spending time with her by inventing phony excuses. So I think that's the piece of the book that really, really tells us that that's what's going on. And that piece touched me so much. I really felt it. Like just the idea that like that's a sore spot for Jessica. Lila's aware of it, and Lila's looking at her, kind of knowing exactly what she's doing and poking at that is like so hurtful. Yeah. And then Jessica has to sort of pretend like she's not that affected by it or whatever.
I also was seeing just the language use of he takes her absolutely everywhere.
Yes.
It's like she's a little doll.
Oh.
What were you saying?
Oh no, your thing is more interesting, but I thought you were going to say if Jessica looks highly on someone, she will want to be seen with them. Mm-hmm. And that's how you know she thinks highly of you, right? And so that Bruce wants to take Regina everywhere. He brings her to the Patmans for dinner, all this type of stuff, means he thinks she's high enough value that he's happy to be seen with her. And that's pokes Jessica too.
But you feel that my comment that it infantilizes Regina and makes Regina seem like a little doll that he brings around with him is actually a more interesting one. So thank you.
After thinking about it, I think they're equally interesting, maybe.
And we even get very clearly, like the book is doing a lot of work of kind of Jessica's interiority itself. They're talking about how Regina has been invited to the Patman's house for dinner, and Jessica says furiously, I can't imagine anything worse. The truth was that Jessica had always wanted to be accepted by the Patmans. She thought their house was beautiful, and she'd always pictured herself covered with jewelry, sweeping across the vast lawns of their estate. Having struck out with Bruce, she had made a play for Roger after his identity was disclosed. And it would have worked, she thought, if Roger hadn't been such a jerk about Olivia. Jessica had done her best to save Roger from social disaster, but in the end, he had refused to be rescued.
I wrote down about that quote that I think it actually downplays Jess's feelings for Bruce. Like, of course, she's so attracted by the money and the status and the power and all the social things around that. But I don't think that's it. I think she also has some kind of feeling or attraction to Bruce that is deeper than that. There's like a mental thing with them. There's a mental connection. We find out he gave Regina a ruby pendant.
What's interesting about that is Lila says, sorry. Well, dinner is one thing, but the most amazing news is that he bought her a ruby pendant. And that to me is such an inversion of Bruce's life and rich people's lives in general. It is a way bigger deal that she was invited to dinner than that he spent money on her. He has all the money in the world. Buying her a ruby pendant is nothing. It's the time that's actually really telling.
But I think she's just trying to poke Jess. And so first she tried with the dinner and Jess said, I can't imagine anything worse. And so, okay, well, maybe spending time with the Patmans isn't that fun. But Jess can't deny she would want beautiful jewelry. Maybe it's like that.
Maybe. Yeah, I see your point. I just think.
And then Jess is like, well, he's so cheap, he's probably charging her rent or something, which I thought was pretty funny.
I thought it was funny too.
Then we get, basically, they have the idea of the bet. Lila's basically saying, I don't know, Jess, like they look pretty cozy. And Jess is saying, no, they're not going to last past 2 weeks, which is around the carnival. And then I think pretty interestingly, then Lila says, let's not bet money. My father says it's vulgar.
I loved that line.
It's funny, but it's also, I think, actually sheds a bit of an interesting light to Lila, which is like, I'm not sure to say it's generosity, but like she knows that it's like Lila knows if they're going to bet money, like that would just be so easy for her because it doesn't have the same value to them. And it sort of becomes less meaningful in a way, or it just means Jessica can't invest in the same way. It's just an interesting thing that like the person with all the money would say, let's not bet money. It's sort of like she's letting Jessica play on the same field in a way that also probably makes it more interesting for her. So they bet a term paper because of course Jessica doesn't want to write the term paper. So whoever, if Regina and Bruce break up before the carnival, Lila has to write Jessica's term paper. And if they're still together, Jessica's going to have to write Lila's.
It just feels like very illogical to think Jessica's having trouble writing one term paper. So she's going to put herself in a situation where she may have to write 2 term papers. But the other thing that makes even less sense to me is why would Jessica trust Lila to write? I mean, maybe Lila is a great writer. And so maybe I've missed that. Like it hasn't been introduced to me that like Lila is smart or like you would trust Lila with your grade. And so it just seems a little weird. Also, like it's a 15-page term paper. Asking one of them to do 2 of them is pretty unreasonable and strange. And you know that it's not going to turn out well.
Okay, it did really bother me that they didn't discuss any like details or requirements beyond just writing it. Because like, yeah, obviously she could just write a piece of shit paper. Like they should have talked about like, it has to this or that. And then of course later that's what happens. Lila writes the paper for her and gets a D- or whatever. But I think the reason that they are betting with the term paper is because they're jointly colluding. It's a way for them to project their emotional stakes onto something when they aren't comfortable being actually talking about the emotional stakes. Like Lila and Jess are so harsh on each other and they poke each other so hard, but like by getting into this term paper bet, they're allowed to be like, oh, I really hope they break up, or oh no, this is happening, or look, do you see that? And like talk about the things they actually both care about, but don't want to talk about the real reasons why.
Yeah, the other thing that kind of confuses me about this is I want the reading to be that, so we know that Jess wants them to break up. Your reading seems to be that Lila is also jealous of Regina, and so Lila also wants them to break up. Then this bet doesn't really make as much sense from Lila's perspective, because if she does want them to break up, having Jessica break them up is the most helpful way to have that happen. But then she'd have to write 2 term papers, and she doesn't want that.
But it's 2 different betting strategies, which is, it's not, she's not thinking they're going to get involved. She's thinking.
Oh, she isn't?
So Lila doesn't get involved. Only Jess does. So Lila, but I think Lila's taking that sort of psychological betting strategy of when you bet against the thing you want, so that you'll either get money or you'll be happy. So from maybe the story I told myself there, because I also wondered about that, of like, why don't they just both scheme together to break them up? Was like, well, then maybe Lila has the philosophy of, I think they're going to stay together. So sort of like hoping for the best, expecting the worst. Like she thinks they're going to stay together because they look pretty cozy. Maybe Jessica will be able to break them up, or maybe they will break up. But like if they don't, then at least she wins the bet, doesn't have to write the term paper. I don't know.
But if she loses the bet, then she has to write 2 term papers.
I'm not saying this was a smart thing to do, Robert.
Okay.
I would not enter in this wager.
Okay, great.
Again, I think where it's trying to tell us it's not about the term paper. Lila says, if Bruce and Regina break up before the carnival, you won't have to worry about the term paper. And if they don't, Jessica thought uneasily, I might as well hang myself. This bet is too important to lose. I mean, Jess cares to not fail at school.
Sure.
But she's not exactly usually having her plot be being stressed out about a paper, if you know what I mean. So
I do know what you mean. Lila goes to her dad's construction site and meets a hot boy.
She usually doesn't look at construction workers. She thinks I must be slipping.
It is like pretty unbelievable that she would entertain this guy based on what we know about how snobby she is. Right? No?
Well, what I think is interesting about it is that she sort of tells herself a story that he must not be just a construction worker. So what happens is she's attracted to this hot construction worker, right? And then she's like, he doesn't seem like the usual one. And then, for example, and he doesn't seem impressed when she tells him her name's Fowler. And so he's kind of, doesn't seem so taken by her the way maybe a normal construction worker would be. And then the references he uses with her, he says, I'm afraid when he has to, a whistle blew signaling the end of the shift. And Jack grinned. Oh, well, I'm afraid that whistle blows for me, to ruin an old quotation. Nice to have met you. So he is, I think, having some signifiers of education, culture, or at
Yeah.
least that's what she's interpreting it as. And then she thinks to herself, he acts as if we're equals. He doesn't fit the image of a regular construction worker. Something about him aroused her curiosity.
So then we
Colin's on a desk.
Colin's
sitting
perched on a desk, of course.
for the carnival committee, which of course Collins is the faculty person for.
And then the Sweet Valley PTA has chosen Regina's mom to be the parent advisor. So Liz needs to meet with her to coordinate the carnival.
Liz was delighted to be in charge. She had a flair for organization. I do need to say that the division of labor that Liz arranges for the carnival committee, I find grossly inappropriate, and I'd like to talk about it.
Of course.
This is a multi-tent, multi-booth affair.
Absolutely.
And she has assigned Olivia by herself the job of getting all the prizes and making all the decorations. Now, I would think that for a carnival, prizes is going to be a pretty significant thing you're going to have to get. In addition to decorations, they're doing everything from scratch for all these tents and booths. And Olivia is the only one doing that. Meanwhile, Regina is, quote, organizing the refreshment stand, and has Enid helping her with this. Why is there two people organizing refreshment stands and only one person doing all that other thing? It's not right. It's not appropriate.
Also, does she get a team of people under her? Like, this is just the kind of committee. I'm assuming there will be like some student helpers.
What? No, this is the committee. They do it. They're doing it.
That sucks.
I didn't hear anything about helpers. If you see something about helpers in the text, I'd love to know. I didn't hear helpers. All right, then we got everyone at the beach, except for
we
George.
learned that George is in a junior flying class. This guy contains multitudes. George, of course, is Enid's boyfriend who's in college. And in addition to being a college student, he is also a flying student, and he's going to be a pilot.
Mm-hmm. Then they talk about how strong Ken Matthews is, and it's a good thing he's helping with the booths, which absolutely emasculates Todd, who says, "What am I?"
But does turn me on.
That gives them a way into the conversation, talking about how Ken, it turns out, is actually running for the president of the Sweet Valley Centennial Student Committee, and he put a lot of effort into making posters and soliciting votes. And we do need to talk about this. So we learned in love letters that the Sweet Valley Centennial is coming up, and we learned that when the girls were at the Civic Center ordering brochures. Okay, and now we find out
pageant.
That's right. There's going to be a beauty pageant. Who knows what else? Now we find out that there's like a student committee, and Ken is running for president. I just wrote, like, this doesn't seem like something that needs a president. It seems like over complicated administration here, and these sort of figurehead nonsense rules. Like, and we see that it's a total popularity contest. Like, they talk about like, oh, Ken would be perfect for it, and I'm like, based on what? And they talk about like campaigning and getting votes, and I'm like, this is a big joke.
Okay. Additionally, who is campaigning against Ken?
Right now, no one.
So why is he putting up signs and, like, if you're the only one running, why are you doing all this work, Ken? What are you running from?
I don't know. We have a lot of the girls putting baby oil on their bronze shoulders.
You got to do that. Got to oil up for the beach.
Then we're still on the beach, but we cut over to where Lila and Jess are, and Lila tells Jess about Jack, and she leaves out the piece of information about him being a construction worker.
Of course. He's a poor, as we call it in the business. And who comes to the beach now?
Wearing what?
Wearing what? So we have an appearance by the man himself, finally, Bruce Patman, tanned and muscular in an absurdly small bathing suit. This has become like Bruce's signature look.
Yeah, and in the previous book, I gave a bad analysis because I remember he was wearing it at the pool party at the Patmans with Roger, or Rags to Riches. And we talked about his tiny bathing suit that was the size of a Band-Aid. And I think I said maybe it's him sort of like showing off for Roger, saying like, look how confident I am. I could even wear this little silly thing. But it looks like this is something he does all the time.
This is his thing.
And Regina,
oh, you know Bruce, he's the one who wears the tiny bathing suits.
Right beside him, holding his hand as if she couldn't bear to let go of him for even a second, Regina. Jessica gets triggered. I better figure out how to break them up. Okay, Then we get chapter 4 and this dinner of Regina at the Patmans. Marie Patman, notorious ice queen, is making Regina uncomfortable, condescending to her.
Ice queen / role model.
Yeah. When she talks to Regina, she speaks slowly and loudly, exaggerated. She's kind of condescending to her, all this type of stuff. Roger, it seems like, has settled in pretty comfortably because he's just like, Mrs. Patman's being so obnoxious, and he goes, "Why are you shouting, Aunt Marie?" as he takes a bite of salad, like just so casually. I'm like, I love that he just kind of like is comfortable saying that kind of thing now.
I also love that Bruce so the chapter opens with gold digger and controversial icon Marie Patman saying, "Roger, pass Regina the butter," and immediately Bruce is like, no, we're not doing that. You don't have to treat her like a 2-year-old. And I was into that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too. And he's being very, her ice queenness is contrasted with Bruce's very new warmth. He's so attentive to Regina. He's smiling warmly, nudging her foot. He's kind of showing her, I'm attentive to you. I care about you.
We assume at this point he's not wearing a tiny bathing suit, right?
Well, he looks more handsome than ever in a navy blue blazer, chinos, and a navy and red striped tie.
Okay, so probably the bathing suit's underneath those chinos? I just wonder if it's an all-the-time thing.
Couple things here. Number one, Regina just observing the contrast between the Patman mansion and her own. And this, for me, was a really obnoxious opposites attract moment.
Yeah, I thought literally
the words, the Patman mansion, though no larger than the Morrow's own, was imposing. Well, the Morrow's house was warm and casual. The Patman's was elegant and forbidding. I'm like, wow, they have such opposite mansion decor. How could they ever relate? It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Come on. Okay, and then here we get a moment of evidence that Regina is more savvy and more sly and more perceptive than people sometimes think she is, and then she sometimes lets people think she is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, we get Marie Patman being salty about the fact that, oh, I thought the carnival would have asked me to be the parent sponsor or whatever. And Regina very nicely explains that they asked her mom because she's new in town and she has a child with a disability, and it makes sense, but we're so grateful for your help. And then she says, Mr. Fowler has already contributed lumber for the stalls.
I love that.
Regina knows what she's doing, okay? And then she notices that Mrs. Patman gives her she says, "Oh, he has he?" Then Mrs. Patman gives her first real smile of the evening. "Maybe I'll give your mother a call tonight and see what Henry and I can do to help." And Regina says, "I'm sure she'd be happy to hear from you." And she notices Mrs. Patman's change in demeanor. And she later thinks to herself, wow, she has a few screws loose. And then she very, very subtly mentions it to Bruce. She says, "Your mother looked as if she was shouting at me the first half of the dinner. She really seemed to warm up after we started talking about my mother and the carnival committee." So Regina likes to understand exactly what is going on and not say that she understands exactly what is going on, but to use what she knows. But then we have this really, really wild moment that we have to talk about that has to do with sexuality.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which moment?
When they're at Miller's Point.
Okay, talk to me.
He's running his hands through her hair, her breath caught in her throat. Bruce was the first boy who had touched her, and each time he held her, she felt almost dizzy with warmth. She lay back in his arms, looking down at the sun setting over the valley. "It's so beautiful here," she murmured. She loved being alone with Bruce, away from everyone at home or at school, but her happiness was tinged with anxiety. "There's still so much I don't know," Regina thought, closing her eyes as Bruce leaned over to kiss her. The feel of his lips on her throat made her sigh with happiness. This paragraph, I think, is so complex. We've had it described from Elizabeth's perspective that Regina doesn't have experience with boys, right? And we also hear that this is the first boy who's touched her. When he is kissing her and her happiness is tinged with anxiety, the context of her anxiety comes right after it says that she loved being alone with him, away from everyone at home or at school. But her happiness was tinged with anxiety. What is causing her the anxiety here? She's with him away from everyone else, and they are alone together. And then she says, "There's still so much I don't know." And I interpreted "there's still so much I don't know" as about sex.
Yeah. Okay.
He is someone who has sex, presumably. She is someone who, this is the first time anyone has literally touched her. When we are told it's the first time touched, he's touching her hair. Okay, so literally touched her. This is probably her first kiss, right? And so it made me wonder, is the anxiety about a potential for violence, or is it anxiety of we're going to have sex and I'm just nervous about that? Hearing like it's the first time a boy's touched her and then they're kissing and she thinks there's so much I don't know. She's thinking about sex, right?
I think so. The reason I had that reaction where I was like sexuality is because when I first read this, I was reading it as there's so much she doesn't know about Bruce. Is he actually changed and good, or is he the bad person that she's heard so much about?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I read it that way,
Mm-hmm.
I like your sex reading better, obviously, because hello. Because she loved being alone with him, away from everyone at home or at school. Like she loved being one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
But in some ways, I wonder if she's like, but is he just like this with me when we're one-on-one? And in reality, has he actually not changed that much? And he's actually still a bad guy. I prefer it to be about sex, though.
Then he says, I love you. And she touches his lips with her fingers. How strange, how wonderfully strange to see those words shaping themselves on Bruce's lips.
Again, I feel like that gets back to, has Bruce changed or not? Like the idea that she's highlighting how strange it is. She recognizes like he hasn't said I love you to people before.
Mm-hmm.
And he confirms that. He says, I've never told anyone I loved her before. I wanted you to know that. And she says, I've never even kissed a boy before. And she blushes.
He says, I wish I could bring your hearing back with a kiss. And she says she's happy and she loves him too. Murray Patman calls the Morrows and says that they're going to match however much money is raised at the carnival. And she's calling the Morrows, of course, because Sky Morrow is the parent committee advisor. Then we have from Sky, she says, this project is giving me a headache. And then we start getting into what's going on with Sky.
Yeah. As we know, Sky is a model. Kurt Morrow
was a model.
Sky was a model.
No,
Kurt
was
Morrow,
is important. She stopped modeling. It's a big part of it.
I know, but I thought I said was, so that's why I was kind of annoyed by your overcorrection. But maybe I said is. This is very embarrassing. Pardo is petting her own silky hair, like so much of a Bruce Patman running his fingers through Regina's silky hair.
I'm muting to have a coffee crisp.
Oh, lucky. I like my coffee crisp. Sorry. So Sky Morrow was a model. Basically, when she met Kurt was a football player. He started a computer company. He gets super rich. And so she has a baby, Nicholas Morrow, would bang. And she basically slowly gives up modeling, but she gets pregnant with Regina, and a glamorous magazine in New York called to offer her the cover assignment. She'd be in their special summer issue modeling bathing suits and resort wear, and she decides to take the job as her kind of last modeling gig. Unfortunately, and listeners, if you don't know this, let me be the first to tell you via Francine Pascal, the modeling industry is incredibly misogynistic and has terrible standards for what women's bodies should look like. And they tell her—
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's fair, Robert. Well, what makes you say such a thing?
They tell her that she has to lose 10 pounds in less than a month. So Sky takes diet pills, loses the weight, the assignment goes really well.
And she looks so good.
But the consequences were
It says she
great,
looks
Pardo.
more beautiful than ever.
Yeah. Oh, that is really fucked up. I didn't even clock that. I was like, oh, good for you. You lost the weight. But it's like, oh, that is fucked to be like.
Basically, the book is telling us it was worth it.
It was absolutely worth it. All she had to do was trade her cover for Regina's hearing, because the pills that Sky had taken had damaged the delicate tissue in the ears of her unborn child somehow. After Regina was born, it became obvious that she wasn't responding to noises the way Nicholas had. The doctor's pronouncement was grave. Regina had suffered permanent damage to her ears. She would never be able to hear normally.
And basically, Sky's kind of self-blame over this just kind of destroys her. She becomes isolated. She begins to suffer from headaches. She is aware that her headaches are caused by her guilt and anxiety. We learned that Regina is not aware of the headaches. When Regina's around, Mrs. Morrow is making a special effort to act as if everything were fine. And I do just want to say, and I think you know where I'm going with this, maybe not. As another point of evidence that Regina knows more than people think she does, later in the book, we get Skye not telling her that she's not feeling well, and we get Regina's perspective of she suspected that her mom was sick again. But she never tells them, she never tells them that she knows. And I think it's important that we see that. Okay.
That's interesting. I did not clock that, but that's definitely true.
But here's the thing. Okay, even if we table just if we just accept that this story that okay, her diet pills led to Regina's hearing impairment, and she has been guilt and anxiety ridden about this for years, right? But then what they tell us is that when things went well for Regina, the headaches stopped, and Skye seemed like her old self. When her picture was in Ingenue, she was happy and excited. But over the past weeks, Nicholas and Mr. Morrow noticed a rapid change in her, and she's having headaches again. And it says, and here's where it starts to get really muddy, where I feel like the internal logic really breaks down here, which is, it was as if Skye had seen how close Regina had come to achieving what she herself had taken for granted. And now the guilt and anxiety were back. So I think what they're trying to say here is this. When they first moved to Sweet Valley and everything's going well, she's feeling a little bit okay. But when Regina got this cover of Ingenue, and she sees that Regina is coming close to achieving modeling success, that makes her have the guilt and anxiety again because of what? This is now pressure. It's a reminder that she may not be able to achieve. What exactly is, why is she...
Is the modeling of it all reminding Skye of her own modeling where she traded 10 pounds for Regina's hearing?
But then why doesn't it just say that? Which is that would make more sense and be so much simpler.
Well, I mean, I didn't write this book part out. If only I had. And
then, even if we accept this, then we get the craziest thing of this book, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which is that, so Nicholas and Mr. and Kurt are talking about, oh no, mom is sick again. I wish there's something we could do to help her. And Kurt is well, there just might be some. I'm looking into it or something. And basically, what happens is Kurt has found some miraculous doctor in Switzerland who, some tiny percentage of people with certain types of hearing impairments, this person can restore their hearing fully over treatments over a year, and it's this special thing. And he sent the medical records of Regina, and he says she's a perfect candidate. So actually we have a way to get Regina's hearing restored. And I wrote down, it's so insane that they quote unquote address Skye's mental health issues with doing a medical intervention for Regina that she never asked for. And it's why is this now necessary? Because and that's where this gets really ethically weird is also Regina seems very well adjusted and happy in how she is pretty much able to manage her environment, with the exception of the dim lighting at the Patmans that made it inaccessible for her to lip read. She pretty much has been getting along well. And she has, as we learned, been able to develop this skill of lip reading and be able to interact with mainstream kids in schools very, very effectively. And she's very socially good and everything. And so the idea that what would trigger a medical intervention wouldn't be her being dissatisfied with her hearing or her wanting that, but that the trigger for that would be so that her mom cannot feel guilty anymore. But this diet pill thing is fucking insane and really problematic, that her disability is getting, it's the stakes of her disability, it's her disability getting an intervention for it so that for someone else. Yeah. But then it turns out she actually kind of wants it. I'm what is going on?
We're going to get to whether she wants it.
We'll get to because there's conflicting evidence. There's conflicting evidence. But in the end, I think they tell us that she does want it.
Yeah, kind of. I also think when you're talking about how well-adjusted Regina is, what's interesting to me is they go out of their way to tell us she can hear tones. So when she speaks, her voice actually doesn't sound any different from anybody else's also.
Well, it sounds it has a slight lilt. Other than the slightest lilt, Robert.
Yeah, I mean, they go out of their way to basically be don't worry, reader.
It's not gonna be different enough to make you uncomfortable.
Right. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. She can pass.
She can pass. One thing, so we have that. Regina then comes home Did anything stick out to you as strange about Regina coming home?
This was so upsetting. I
Wait,
wrote,
oh.
this is the most insane. So she basically comes home to a celebration, okay? They're pouring
Oh, no,
shit-
sorry. Before we even get into that, what I was hoping you were going to notice is she comes home and calls out anyone home. She is deaf. That is not how she would behave.
Maybe when she says anyone home, they'll enter the room.
Or flicker lights or something. It's just like, come on.
Well, she hears tones, so maybe they say, I don't know. I don't know. So they're all in the kitchen waiting for her. Her mother is fully clothed, looking younger, more beautiful than ever. They have champagne flutes. And of course, she is underage, and actually Nick is too. Yeah, this is really, really, really disturbing on multiple levels. The toast.
Oh, yeah, it's just like gross. I mean, they're all drinking. Mrs. Morrow says,
sorry. First of all, they make her toast. Like, I just hate the fact that they're like springing this on her like some surprise, that it's like, this is not how this should be discussed or approached. Like, this is her own body and her own health, and it's like, you don't. So it's just, I find it so obnoxious that they not only are they toasting it, they like make her drink the glass of champagne before they even tell her what they're toasting. Like, they like keep her in this gross suspense, and it's so like disempowering, all of it.
It's weirdly both infantilizing and because
giving her booze.
And giving her booze. It's like a very strange thing to me.
And then
they toast and they say to Regina, and then Nicholas says to all of us. And then Regina says, all drink to that. Now what's going on? And Mr. Morrow takes a brief breath and says, Regina, what would you say if I told you there was a chance your hearing could be completely restored? Nicholas saying to all of us makes it so, he's like saying the quiet part out loud. He's like, oh, this isn't really about Regina. This is about how Regina's hearing loss impacts our family. So it's really, let's toast to all of us. How great is it that we can fix our broken family member? Deeply fucked up.
Not to belabor this, but it's just someone who's been deaf their whole life to get a potentially transformative treatment. First of all, that's going to take a year. That's going to take moving to Switzerland. I mean, forget that. But also just the massive change of, this is going to change your whole way that you encounter the world and move through the world and everything. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot to consider. That's a lot to take in. And it feels very diminishing that they're just treating it as like something to toast to, as if it's just like the taken for grantedness that her feelings about it would be so simple that it would just be pure joy, and that she wouldn't have any other feelings about it. It just seems so thoughtless.
And it seems like if I were Regina walking into this, I'd be like, oh, maybe dad got a promotion. Maybe mom booked the cover of a new magazine. And like, you would never walk into the situation and be like, oh, this will be about me. And clearly it is not really about her.
It's so gross. It's so gross.
Regina is shocked. She just says, what, kind of weakly. Then she wonders if they're joking. And then she begins to tremble with excitement. The whole time her father was talking, her mind was racing. I'll be able to hear again. I'll hear Bruce's voice. I'll be able to talk to him on the telephone. And when we're together, I'll know what he's saying even with my eyes shut.
And then they drop the just little tiny detail that this is going to take a year, and that she will have to be in Switzerland for that because Dr. Friedrich can't make house calls to Sweet Valley.
Which does make sense. It's fine to me that Dr. Friedrich.
They're laughing. They are telling her this news laughing, unaware of the expression of growing horror on her face. What the fuck is wrong with these people?
And then her mom
says it's only a year.
Her mom literally says, you've been through so much already. One more year and you'll never have to worry again. Which there are a couple of different things about this that are really fucked up. One is to be like, well, your life has already been so fucked up. What's one more year? But the other thing is you'll never have to worry again. She doesn't mean that. What she means is I'll never have to worry again. And Regina is just like, no. She jumps to her feet. Her face is blazing. She says, forget it. For the first time in my whole life, I've finally been able to live a normal life. I'm doing well in school and I've made real friends. How can you expect me to just jump on a plane and spend the next year in a foreign country with no one but doctors to talk to? It's easy for you. You can come visit and go skiing and then come home again. But I'm the one who has to make the decision, and I'm not going to go. I just am so proud and impressed with the way that Regina is able to take the overwhelming emotions that she feels and translate them into really succinct, really clear messaging that her parents can understand. And I just really love that she is showing, like, yes, you've infantilized me. Yes, you're worried about this thing that I'm not worried about. But look, like, if you're worried about me functioning in society and expressing myself successfully, look, I'm doing it right now, bitches. And then she storms out.
Regina's getting ready for a date with Bruce. She, I think, again, showing so much maturity and composure, apologizes to Kurt and Nicholas about how she reacted. And they say, oh, so you want to go? And she says, no, I can't go. Basically, I'm sorry for how I reacted. I appreciate what you've done, but like, I'm happy here. And they say, well, please think it over. And she says, okay, I'm going to think it over, but don't be angry at me if I decide to stay. And that was a relief. Like, I just liked her being able to have agency and say, like, you know what, like, I can communicate about this to you, and I can acknowledge that if I upset you or whatever, or how I reacted, which was completely understandable, her reaction. She has nothing to apologize for, in my opinion. It's kind of like how the twins were apologizing to Alice for not congratulating her on her promotion when they found out. Like, no, you know what I mean? But like, so she's like showing so much grace and maturity here, I think. And I liked her saying, you know, but I still might not want to do this. So
I love it. I think it's great.
It's her decision. This is her decision, not theirs.
And I love the way that she's able to clearly and easily articulate that.
Okay, then she goes with Bruce.
And we get a little bit more of like really understanding why Regina is so committed to staying here. For the first time in her life, she had a real circle of friends. She had a home she loved. And she had her family with her every single day. Sweet Valley seemed almost magical to Regina since the day she moved in. And when Mr. Townsend had stopped her in the street and asked her if she'd like to model for a special story in Ingenue magazine, she knew it was magic.
But, and here's where I think is a piece of evidence that she does want the treatments, because it says, but none of those things would have stopped her. So basically what this is telling us is, if not for Bruce, it would be a no-brainer. Even though she's so happy, and even though she has all these wonderful things in Sweet Valley, she's still actually, it says, to have her hearing restored, to be able to hear music and voices and rain falling, you know, how amazing to have this option. But now she had Bruce. And I think like part of what's going on here is that she's thinking like, Bruce isn't going to wait for me. You know, I think part of what because she says he'd never understand. And I think what that sort of means is like, what would he say if I told him I was going? Like, what if, I don't know.
I see that. I didn't read that. I didn't read it that way the first time, but I can see what you're saying.
Like it says he'd never understand. And then I think we have a parallel to some of the thinking we had with Trisha Martin, where it says, nothing can make me leave Sweet Valley and Bruce. And no matter what, Bruce is not going to learn about the treatments or my decision to forego them, because that's what loving someone means. She thought to herself, it means if you have to, you're willing to make a sacrifice for someone you really care about. So kind of a similar thing maybe where like, whereas Trisha didn't want to tell Stephen she was sick because she thought it would be too upsetting for him or whatever, Regina like is telling herself that because she loves Bruce, she's going to make the sacrifice of not getting her hearing restored and him not knowing that.
Yeah. I think because she loves Bruce, she doesn't want to get her hearing restored. And like kind of like the Trisha Martin, it would be harder for him to know that that's why she was doing it. I really like that. I thought that's very good. I did not really make that connection, but I appreciate it very much.
Well, and then I think Bruce sort of does it back to her at the end with the letter, right?
Yes.
We can skip probably to Liz and Sky Morrow, right? I mean, again, we get a sort of messy mom confessing her anxieties and whatever she's worried about her daughter to Liz, and Liz kind of taking that on.
It's so weird. There's again, we have this recurring thing with promises and Liz making promises. This time Sky is like, you mustn't tell Regina. Promise me you won't tell. Like,
sorry, just to be clear, Sky tells Liz Liz goes to Sky's house to talk about the carnival. And Sky just like tells Liz everything about the whole story about the diet, from the diet pills up until Dr. Friedrich and Regina not wanting to go.
Totally inappropriate.
totally appropriate. She's like, Liz, can you please convince her? And Liz is like, oh, I feel like it should be her decision, but like maybe I'll try. I don't know.
It's just like such poor boundaries. I love that. So Liz is trying to think like, what do I do? Should I help? Should I not help? And we get this line. On the other hand, Elizabeth hated to interfere. Yeah, right. Not this Elizabeth.
Then we get a really funny scene of Jess and Ken are sitting on the lawn, and Ken is like seems upset, and Jess is asking him what's wrong, but she really doesn't care, and he's upset that Bruce is running against him now to be president of the student committee of the bicentennial. And like Jess is very much like, oh, you'll definitely win, but she really doesn't care, and in her mind she's like, how can he care so much about such a stupid role? And I wrote down like, she is right.
Yeah.
All right, then Jessica's wishing that Ken would go away so she could scheme in peace. But then Ken gives her a good idea. Like she says, oh, you're probably gonna win. He says, well, actually, Bruce is really popular now that he's with Regina. People think he's changed. Plus, the Patmans are gonna probably buy the election with campaigning. He's gonna put, which I think again reinforces the just bullshitness of this whole thing. But then that gives Jessica an idea, which is, what if I actually convinced Regina that Bruce was actually only dating her so that people would like him more, so that he would win this meaningless committee position?
What's strange to me about this is that we haven't seen any indication that Bruce isn't well liked. We've seen indications that Bruce shouldn't be well liked. He treats people terribly. He's arrogant. He's a dick in all the previous books. But he's always got a table full of people laughing at his jokes and like
A bunch of hangers on.
enjoying his pizza. And so it's just like a little
the
like,
Ronnies. Yeah.
I just don't buy it.
No, it's stupid. It's very stupid.
But it is not the stupidest misunderstanding and scheme in the text.
Oh.
We'll get there. Oh, Jessica suggests for the carnival a brilliant idea, which is a mother-daughter fashion show. And the way that she suggests it makes me think she's doing it to get at Regina somehow, but I don't really get how this fucks with Regina.
It's not that it fucks with her, it's just that it gives her a way in, an excuse to spend time with the family so that she can
Oh yeah,
get time
that's
with her.
true.
But this is so funny because Jessica comes to the carnival committee. She's like, I have an idea. How about a mother-daughter fashion show? And then Liz frowned thoughtfully. Not bad. Do you think mom would do it? Jessica burst out laughing. Not me, Liz, she said. And you think I'm vain? Elizabeth blushed. So Elizabeth was thinking of herself. Okay.
Yes.
Elizabeth was thinking, oh, you want me to do it? And now she's embarrassed. And Jess says, no. Regina, of course, was on the cover of Ingenue. Sky was a model. They should do it. But what I don't understand is, how do you have a fashion show with just two people? Are they just
Thank you.
Are they changing clothes in the tent?
Yes, there's later on they say something about getting multiple sets of clothes. So it is just going to be Regina and Sky parading back and forth in different outfits. And we have to stand around twiddling our thumbs while they're changing?
Very, very strange.
Terribly strange. And just a terrible idea also. Nothing says carnival like a mother-daughter fashion show. Huh.
And then Liz is like, I don't know, Jess, like Mrs. Morrow, like I don't know if you can convince her, because Liz obviously has recently been with Mrs. Morrow and knows she's out of sorts. And Jess is like, yes, I can. And then Liz is like, oh no, I'm unleashing Jessica on the Morrows. Like imagine the damage she's gonna do. We skipped Winston shaking his wet hair like a puppy all over everyone. I think another point on the ADHD.
Sure.
Again, they're talking about how Ken is a perfect candidate. I would love to know why. And I want to say that to me, based on the evidence in this book, Ken is a terrible candidate. Because what have I learned about Ken from this book? I have learned that he shirks responsibilities. He was apparently committed to show up to this carnival committee meeting. And guess what? He didn't notify the head of the carnival committee to let her know he wouldn't be there. He just casually decides to play hooky. And so he can go work on his campaigning, which we have to find out from Todd. That is not professional. That's not appropriate. And that is not someone I want to see as my student president of the Centennial Student Committee.
I can understand that. I can understand your concerns, your grave concerns. No, you're definitely not wrong.
I had to note, where is Bruce's Caroline moment? Caroline Pierce had to basically spend 3-4 chapters groveling and apologizing and taking accountability to people. And
good point.
And it still made it seem like her redemption in the eyes of the students and for people to build trust with her and think kindly of her was going to be a long road. Day by day, she's going to chip away at this and become a better person and people will like her. Whereas Bruce has issued no apologies, has taken no accountability, and yet everyone instantly is very happy to call him redeemed, and that's it. And there's even this scene that makes me insane when later Liz is talking to him about the letter to Regina or whatever, and he's like showing her how he really has changed, and he's like, I know I've been an asshole, like I probably have so many people I need to apologize for, but right now all I could think about is Regina or something. And I'm like, that's as close as we come to him taking any accountability, and it's just him being like, I probably should apologize, but
I'm not gonna.
And we don't get anything, and I'm just like, the absolute misogyny and sexism, and like the fact of like the bar being so fucking low for men.
But I mean, Pardo, let's be real. Like, Caroline spread rumors about people. Like, what did Bruce do that was so bad? I mean, yeah, sure, he like sexually assaulted, I guess, several characters and also emotionally abused several characters. But like, does that even compare to Caroline spreading rumors? No, it doesn't.
You're right.
Thank you.
Okay, then we get the introduction of Donald.
Oh, Donald.
Nicholas has someone he wants Regina to meet in the backyard. He has thick sandy hair and green eyes. His name is Donald Essex. He's visiting from San Francisco. And to her surprise, he greeted her in sign language. Turns out he's a success story from Dr. Friedrich, and they brought him there to try to convince Regina.
Turns out he's really good at Frisbee.
And this is, I think, a scene that shows us Regina's just sort of heart wisdom, where it's like Regina's heart melted as she watched her brother stroll across the lawn. Well, that's weird. But how wonderful her family was. They'd invited Donald down hoping he could change her mind. I don't know. Okay, you could take it a few ways. The way I initially took it was like, at this point, she doesn't want to go, but she actually still appreciates where her family's coming from, and that like from where they're coming from, they care about her, and that's why they did this. So to me, I thought that was extremely mature to be like, I don't actually like this or think I don't like this, even whatever, but like from their perspective, they do this for care for me, and that's nice that they made that effort. Like, I'm like, that's really mature. Don't you think? I mean, the other perspective is
the other perspective is
that at this point she already knows that she does want to go.
Oh, I thought the other perspective was she has not yet realized that they're doing this because it's most convenient for them, and so they're trying to convince her is not kind, it's selfish.
Yes, for sure. That's true of all the readings, I think.
Okay. Now Donald's cute. Have we talked about that at all yet?
Yeah, he seems hot and nice and smart and sensitive.
I'm like very, very into Donald. I was like, oh,
and he's appropriate. He's appropriate because he later rejects Jessica. Spoiler alert. Regina and Donald just go for a really lovely walk, and
they seem like fast friends.
He tells her about his experience. She feels like she's known him for years. He sort of asks her if she's afraid of hearing, and if she's afraid of what it would mean to be quote unquote normal all of a sudden. She flushes deeply and says, I'm not afraid. If I had only myself to think of, I'd be on the first plane to Switzerland. I mean, that again seems like if she's being honest, then I think that again makes it seem like, yeah, she actually does want to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
But she's not exactly sure. Okay.
Yeah, she's still confused. She's crying. And Donald squeezes her shoulder lightly and says, we'll talk tomorrow. And I thought, thanks, Donald.
I love Donald.
I'm a huge Donald head over here.
Donald might be, okay, this is bold, but he might be the number one guy we've met so far. Has there been a better guy? I mean, just all around hotness, personality, and everything.
I would throw Nick Morrow's name into the mix. I have seen online that.
Are you joking?
Well, we don't hate him yet, right? I know we're gonna hate him. I don't know why yet, but people online are like so anti Nick Morrow.
Wait, really? They are?
Yes.
I didn't know that. No, he doesn't do anything bad ever.
Oh,
I can tell you now. No, but I can tell you, there's no like thing that he does that makes him hated. Like I think what he's done that makes him hated is what we've already read in my mind. But
what has he done bad?
Well, then later he goes on this weird game show.
Oh,
that's the most random plot they do. And it's 100 books later. It's the most insane thing ever. But just him being him being really intense and vampiric with Elizabeth, just all of that.
That was creepy. I still think he's hot, and he's rich. Is Donald rich? Oh, I guess Donald must be rich because his parents paid for the ear stuff.
Unless maybe Dr. Friedrich, it was the first time he did it. Maybe he has some sort of research grant or some sort of medical trial. Okay. Chapter 8. We have Jessica calls Regina on the phone. Faux pas.
I loved.
Elizabeth is absolutely shaking her head in disbelief. Only my twin would be so fucking stupid.
We got some light badminton play. This Donald really is a sports enthusiast.
And then we have Jess kind of schmoozing with Regina and Sky. And she, as always, is so brilliant. And the way that she kind of, I think, convinces Sky to do it is she says, Liz is really worried about the carnival. Things are really just not, she's worried everything's not going to come together and it's really late in the game or whatever. And so she's basically poking at the fact that Sky has been underperforming in her role of parent advisor and maybe let Liz down. And she knows that might get her, and that is what gets her. And she says, okay, I'll participate. Yeah. And then again, being brilliant. Oh, wait a minute. So, and then about the mother-daughter fashion show, right?
Correct.
So they agree to do it. And Jessica says she'll be able to get some dresses with them from Lizette's.
Yeah, I highlighted Lizette. Who's Lizette?
Oh, I wrote down Lizette's is the store that in book 2 or so, Lila shoplifted.
That's Lizette's?
I believe it was from Lizette's because I wrote down Jessica can arrange clothes from Lizette's. Are we this cozy with them when in book 2 already we had the shoplifting drama?
Wait. Oh. That's fascinating.
Was that a different store? I believe it was Lizette's.
I mean, I trust you, certainly.
Maybe an Iyer can correct us.
What do you say? Oh, an Iyer could certainly correct us, but...
And then we have just some really, really, really brilliant Jessica scheming, and I just need to read it, okay? She's talking to Regina about how happy she is with Bruce, right? So Regina says to Jess, I don't think I've ever been so happy. Jessica shook her head, her blonde hair tumbling over her tan shoulders. It just goes to show, she murmured. You should never listen to rumors. Rumors? Regina asked, her face wrinkling in confusion. What rumors? Jessica shrugged. Don't give it another thought, she said. People can be so stupid, Regina. And I just want to say that is a very, 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 very housewives thing to do, which is to bring up rumors and then be like, oh, I would never say them because you don't spread rumors. You're just, you know what? It's like in linguistics, reference versus use. You're using, but you're pretending you're just referencing. So it's like she's doing the rumoring, but she's pretending she's just talking about them. Very, very housewives thing to do.
Well, you know, I'll just kind of get right to the point. It sounds like you are out spreading rumors about my marriage and my husband.
There are rumors about you.
But you are out spreading them.
Oh, maybe I said I've heard rumors about her husband, but that's all I said. But if I were to go for the jugular and talk about the rumors, the nastiness about her, oh, I can do that. Do you know what? You want me to go there with her husband? I can go there.
And then Jess says, it all has to do with this ridiculous election. I'm sure Bruce told you about it. She's like, what election? She's like, oh, that's strange. Well, you see, Bruce is running against Ken for the presidency vice Centennial Student Committee. I think it's pretty silly. But you know the Patmans, they care so much. I'm sure they blah, 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 blah. And then Regina's like, what does that have to do with me? And she's like, Jessica, please tell me. I think this is another moment where she's really forcing Jessica to spell it out. Jessica says, Ken says that Bruce wouldn't stand a chance of winning if it weren't for you. Since you two started going out, Bruce has gotten so much more popular. I guess you can sort of see Ken's point. And then Regina stares at her. I don't think I really understand. You know what I'm saying? It's a little bit playing naive here.
I see that.
You mean people think Bruce is only dating me, so more people will vote for him? And then Jessica's like, yeah, I told you it was silly. And Regina's like, it is. And then Jessica's like, of course it is kind of strange that Bruce didn't mention it. I guess he just forgot.
We then get Jessica having some car trouble. And I believe this is the first time we've seen anybody curse in these books. Jessica says, damn.
You know, I was reading in some of my trivia that I had about some of the ghostwriters, I was reading an interview with one of the ghostwriters who wrote later books in the series, and he was talking about how many swears they got, and they got something like they were allowed to say a couple of bitches and dams, like, and so he said he would use as many as they could, but it was like there was a 3 or 4 limit, but it might have been later years. I don't know. So I don't know what the things were. We can look it up. Yeah. It probably is the first time we've seen damn. So
Jessica's having car trouble. Whoever could help her with this car trouble, why? It's totally fuckable. Douglas.
Donald.
Sorry, totally fuckable Donald. Donald is a much less fuckable name than Douglas, in my defense.
Jessica lays it on thick.
If you decide to come, give me a call and I'll tell you all about it. Regina has my number.
The carnival. She invites him to the carnival.
He's like, wait a minute. But Jessica, relying on a delicate sense of timing acquired through years of practice, put her foot on the gas pedal, and roared around the driveway. I just love the way that she's so good at playing boys.
All right, Regina wakes up sad.
And then we see Regina and Bruce together again. And Bruce again is just showing, I'm a good boyfriend. Like, I noticed that something is wrong. You've been really quiet. I like am attuned to your needs and your thoughts. Please let me care for you. And she's just like, no, it's fine.
She's basically trying to get him to tell her about the election thing. She's like, you're not running for that thing, are you? And he's like, oh, I am actually. She's like, well, why do you tell me? He's like, oh, because I thought I would only just tell you if I won. And by the way, the whole logic of him not telling her is crazy because he says he's not going to tell her unless he wins. As if
but he's running. She would know.
Exactly. The whole thing's a popularity contest that you have to publicly campaign for people to vote for you. So she would obviously know. It's so stupid.
And he's keeping it as a surprise because he thinks she'll like
respect him or something.
No, I think it's because it's like he wants to show that he's serious.
And that he is like charitable. He says he wanted to do it to give back to the community.
Whatever the fuck that means. Like, how are you giving back to the community? Disperse your wealth if you really want to give back to the community.
Literally, one second.
So they have this kind of awkward fight where he's trying to keep it a secret because he wants to surprise her. And so he's trying to play it cool. And she's just getting increasingly hurt and upset because he's keeping it a secret. And it seems like he's using her, which it doesn't really, but fine.
And this is where she thinks to herself, he's just going to dump me. I'm just like all the other girls. And
she also has this moment where you mentioned like kind of what triggers her. And here she says something like, he thinks I'm stupid.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks I can't figure out he thinks I'm an idiot. He thinks I can't figure out what's going on.
Yep. And that's when the special conversation happens. It says, like, she basically says, well, if you think I'm so crazy that I thought that, then let's basically break up. And she like freaks out and goes out of the car. And he says, if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get. I can't believe I thought you were different. I thought you were special. And it turns out you're as messed up as any other girl. I'm sure he thought I was special. Regina thought angrily, tears streaming down her face. Too special to figure out he was only putting up with me so more people would vote for him. Well, I'm tired of being special. And I think it's time I did something so no one can ever accuse me of being special again. This is really well done, I think, actually, this paragraph, because really we get here some of the complexities of what's going on here through the many meanings of the word special, right? Which is like, they're talking about being special to each other in the sense of being unique. But also, as we've discussed, and as you just mentioned, she's being triggered by her perception that she's being treated as quote unquote special, as a sort of coded derogatory way of talking about someone with a disability in the sense that she's maybe not understanding or not smart. She doesn't get it. This whole fear of being seen as oblivious or foolish.
It's a very authentically done miscommunication, but it is therefore very frustrating.
But I thought, okay, yes, 100%. But I thought that her reacting in that way made sense. Like, like the fact that she would overreact because she has that trigger because of how she's been treated, like, didn't make sense to me.
Oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's just annoying. I just wanted them both to sit down and be like, what are you actually talking about?
No, it's frustrating. Okay, then we get this absolutely outrageous, stupid nonsense with Elizabeth and Todd show up to the Morrows to talk to Scotty about the fucking carnival. They see Donald. Donald thinks Elizabeth is Jess and it flirts with her. And she's like, what? And Todd is like frustrated and jealous about it. And so there's like this misunderstanding going on where like this actually like now things are tense between Liz and Todd.
So they're fighting because a guy hits on Elizabeth and is overly familiar with Elizabeth. And Elizabeth says, I've never seen this guy before.
Use your brain.
This is the use your brain moment of the book. Instead of either one of them being like, wait, he's acting like he's met me before, but I haven't met him before. Maybe he's met someone who looks exactly like me. There actually isn't even a plausible alternate explanation. It's just, it's terrible. It's really, really, really bad.
It's ridiculous.
What was going on here, Liz said. Like, I think you must be making some kind of mistake.
It's very stupid. I do have a tiny theory on what the point of it might have been.
I'm listening.
Because basically, so for the listener, they have this stupid misunderstanding, and then there's a little bit of tension between Liz and Todd for a while, and then at the end of the book, they realize, oh, he thought I was Jess. Ha ha ha. Okay. And I was just thinking, like, why? The only thing I could come up with was that fight showed us that there may be some lingering trust issues between them, for example, from Nicholas. So, like, the fact that Todd reacted so strongly to this very mild Donald nonsense, I wondered if, like, it was only a couple books ago that Liz went on a date with Nicholas and then saw Todd at the restaurant and pretended to be Jess. So I could see why maybe his shackles are getting up a little bit, you know?
I can understand that. Can I ask a question? And this will take us out of the podcast, but I do want to know, if you use a word incorrectly, would you rather someone tell you, or you would rather it just like kind of be left in for the podcast?
I would like to know.
Okay. So you said it got his shackles up.
Uh-huh.
And I think you mean hackles.
Because
shackles are like chains.
Yeah, you're right. I meant hackles.
And I just didn't know if you wanted... What really happened was I could picture my brother texting me being like, Carter doesn't know the difference between shackles and hackles. And then I didn't know if you wanted to know or didn't want to know.
I want to know.
Okay. I don't ever want to know. Let's keep going.
All right. Then we get Liz is all hot to trot about the carnival. She hasn't been sleeping. She's stressed about the carnival. And then Regina says, I got to talk to you.
She looks different today. She looked a lot older than she did than when I saw her last. More serious.
Yeah. Regina's like, listen, I know my mom told you about Switzerland. I'm actually going to go. I didn't tell Bruce. And then Regina tells Liz the entire story about her whole fight with Bruce, omitting only Jessica's role as informer. And Elizabeth is like, oh, I guess Bruce actually was being a dick. I guess I was right. And then she tells her, I was never crazy about you and Bruce. You're too good for him. I'm glad you're going. Then Elizabeth and Collins have a little tete-a-tete. And Collins basically tells Liz, you know, people can change and don't be so sure.
And Mr. Collins is, of course, sitting on the edge of his desk, swinging his legs as he says that. He has the hilarious line, all I'm saying is try to keep an open mind. It's what you're known for around here, which is just truly, truly the most absurd thing in the world. What she's known for around here is being a gossip. She's known for keeping an open ear, not an open mind.
Then we get Liz and Jess. Liz tells Jess that Regina and Bruce broke up. And Jessica is then relieved that she doesn't have to write her term paper.
But she has to play it off like she's just happy for Regina, because it's like she can't tell anyone about her devious bet.
Liz figures out about the Donald mix-up because Jessica tells Liz about the hot guy at the Morrows, and she figures out what happened. Lazy Elizabeth figures out what happened about the mix-up.
Finally.
Then we get into chapter 11. And
chapter 11 describes Jessica as her first triumphant day of term paperlessness, which I thought was just a great line.
We have Jess and Lila. Jessica's gloating that she won. She starts to worry. Her high spirits suddenly dampened. It occurred to her that winning this bet wasn't necessarily the end of her troubles. You'll do a good job on the paper, won't you? She asked anxiously. I really need you to pull my grade up. And Lila's like, yeah, don't worry. And then
you
Todd
shouldn't gloat, Jessica. It's vulgar.
Liz and Todd make up, and weren't we so silly? Wasn't that a dumb little silly fight we had? I'm so glad we get to kiss and make up.
It like was an incredibly, I guess silly is the word, but like incredibly dumb as fuck fight. But I guess I can't say dumb as fuck.
Then they talk about Regina and Bruce, and Todd's like, well, I also hated him, but you know, maybe he is actually really changing. Like, maybe give him a chance. He looks really sad about Regina. And then Bruce comes over to them, and he also looks like he hasn't slept in days. And he says, please, Liz, can I talk to you? Can you please come over to my house? And she's like, fine, but I'm not happy about it.
He has this, I think, very beautiful and very mature line where he says, it's not easy for me to ask for help, but I'm asking now. I need to talk to you. And I was just like, oh, this is like, he really has gotten a lot out of his relationship with Regina. Like his communication skills have dramatically changed. It feels very different to me, and I'm very pleased for him.
Then she's at his house.
Oh, this is another example, sorry, quickly, of it being a big thing they need to talk about, but they can't talk in the moment. Like they do this all the time, where it's like, I really need to talk to you later. And it's like, well, it sounds like you probably just have like 3 or 4 sentences. So do you want to just say them now?
Yeah. Liz, I'll be honest with you, Bruce said, running a hand through his hair. I know how you feel about me, and I don't blame you. I've done some pretty obnoxious things. when things haven't gone right for me, I guess I always knew that I deserved what I got, and sometimes worse. But Regina, he broke off. His voice choked with emotion.
Bruce, I really don't feel comfortable talking about this. I'm sorry about you and Regina, but it doesn't have anything to do with me. So I'll just get going now, and this is just another moment where it's like, Liz, what is your kind of thought process here? You went over to his house. So
Yeah.
clearly you're gonna get involved, but you're pretending like you're not gonna get involved?
And then he's like, please, you have to help me. I don't understand. Why she break up with me? I'm so upset. I've been racking my brain. I don't understand. She was like, you really don't know? And she's like, why didn't you tell Regina we're running for president of the thing? And he's like,
Stupidest
what?
thing ever.
And she's like, she thought you kept it for. He's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, Liz, I signed up for the last Thursday. That was 5 days ago. I've known Regina for weeks. The reason I didn't mention I was running was because I was going to surprise her if I won. I'm so happy to live in Sweet Valley after Regina. I wanted to give something back to the town. When you fall in love with someone, you change, and I'm changing for the better. And I'm sure there's a lot of apologizing I ought to do for the way I used to behave. But right now, Liz, I don't feel like doing anything before I apologize to Regina. And I just want to say he hasn't changed that much because he never does actually apologize to anyone else. And I think there's some grains of salt in this transformation. So
I can hear that. I mean, I think
the only person you care to make good with is the person who's fucking you. You haven't changed.
Well, I don't know that they're fucking. I mean, at this point, they're just touching each other's hair.
Well,
But we know where that leads, of course. So Liz tells Bruce everything about Switzerland.
and like Liz is worried that, oh no, he's gonna ruin everything. He's gonna go to Regina and make her stay, and that sucks. And then he cries.
I would never have believed it in a million years, but Bruce Patman is crying.
All right, then Bruce writes a letter.
A love letter.
That's right. I mean, you should read this.
I agree.
I
Now,
won't
Bruce
give it
is,
the tenderness it deserves.
Bruce is heterosexual, so I'm going to have to really stretch my acting muscles. Oh, no, that's Todd. Sorry. Got to get to my Bruce voice. Dear Regina, by the time you read this, it will be too late for you to change your mind about the treatments. And you mustn't change your mind, my dearest. Not for anything. Elizabeth told me everything, and I must admit that at first, all I could think of was rushing over to your house and putting things right again. I never cared about anything but you. I signed up to run in the election last Thursday, exactly 5 days ago. I was wrong not to mention to you at once, but I wanted to surprise you if I won. I can't believe you could ever imagine my using you. I love you with all my heart, and always will. In fact, it's because I love you that I can't explain all this to you before Friday. If there's the slightest chance that you might be able to hear again one day after these treatments, you must go through with them. I'm not selfish enough to let you stay in Sweet Valley for my sake, Regina. But I'm too selfish to let you go thinking badly of me. You must know that I've loved you with all my heart from the first. Bruce shows himself to be a little different from Elizabeth. He rereads his work and says, it's not perfect, but it's how I feel. Whereas if Elizabeth had written this, she would be like, wow, it's the most perfect thing that's ever been written ever. I've got quite a knack.
Still got it.
Still got it.
My only thing to say about this letter is that when we were reading love letters and we had Caroline plagiarizing from Elizabeth or Robert Browning's letters, and we were like, would anyone think that this was written by like a regular teenager or like high schooler? And we wondered, I think, how much in the 80s could some of this have been the norm? And we said, well, we better see another love letter from another book to compare. And I do want to say, Bruce does say, like, you mustn't change your mind, my dearest.
Yeah.
And I feel like my dearest was some of the type of things we were looking at in Caroline's letters and saying, like, maybe this was more normal at the time. So I feel like that's a data point for that.
I agree. Also, this, you must know that I've loved you with all my heart from the first.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is flowery, definitely. This fucking carnival still isn't over. So Liz is trying to round up everybody to do this fucking carnival.
But one interesting thing happens.
You're telling me. One very surprising and very strange thing happens.
Mr. Collins comes in, but he wasn't alone. And he seemed unusually flustered as he strolled over to his desk.
Well, what could fluster Mr. Collins?
Mind if I sit in on this meeting? Nora Dalton asked, following Mr. Collins into the room and sliding into an empty desk in the front of the room.
Now, you have answered a question in your dramatic and beautiful reading. You've answered a question for me. So Miss Dalton is not a native French speaker in your mind.
I'm not going to do an accent.
Okay, but I'm especially if in your mythology she's just a sweet valleyite who happens to speak fluent French. Great.
Do you think she's a native French speaker?
Absolutely not. Although it would make sense why she was dating students. They're much looser over there, aren't they?
There was no evidence for that, and there was no investigation.
Well, that's why there's no evidence, because there's no investigation.
And Miss Dalton's like, we can do some international food. I'll make crepes.
Which, sorry, is the worst idea. Unless Mademoiselle Dalton has a portable crepe maker where she can live make these crepes at the carnival. If she is suggesting that she is going to bring pre-made crepes, to that I say no. And again, no, Mademoiselle Dalton. That is disgusting. They're going to get soggy and gross. If she has a hot griddle she's bringing and she's going to make those crepes live in the moment, still a bad idea. We're all waiting in line for crepes. We need something fast. What about popcorn?
You know, I didn't even consider the possibility of like prefab crepes. I assumed it was a griddle scenario.
Okay.
I didn't worry about the sort of how long it would take, because I feel like they don't actually need that long to cook. And a couple of episodes ago on Housewives of Salt Lake City, there was a party and they did have a crepe stand, and it seemed like everyone was getting, and they were making them, and it seemed like everyone's getting their crepes pretty quick. My question is more the budget. We're only raising $800 total for this thing, unless Fowler or Patman donated a griddle. Where's the griddle budget coming from? So,
not to mention the batter, the strawberries, the powdered sugar. Can I ask one really quick question, which is obviously going to get us sidetracked, but it is for me worth it. Was the crepe station like a customizable, I want cheese and artichoke hearts and this and that? Or was it like just plain crepes, simple, no fuss, no muss?
I actually think it was something not even what you said, which is a third option, which is just sweet. So I think it was crepes, and then you have a few sweet toppings you can choose from, no savory, just to simplify. So maybe it was like strawberries, bananas, Nutella, powdered sugar, and you can.
You're saying maybe. I'm asking you about the Real Housewives that happened.
Oh, I thought you were talking about in Sweet Valley.
Oh no, gosh, no! It can't happen in Sweet Valley. Sorry, I mean at the Real Housewives party.
I think those were just sweet, but I have to go back and check.
Yeah, you're gonna need to go back and check. I'm sorry.
Funny.
Do we want to pause now and have you go back and check? Or
All right, Bruce gives Liz the letter. She says she's gonna hide it in Regina's suitcase, and she realizes Bruce is actually a nice boy because he doesn't want to be selfish, and he's not going to tell Regina how much he cares for her until she's already gone because he doesn't want it to impact her decision. And she decides to give Bruce a little kiss on the cheek impulsively because he changed so much. He deserves it.
That was weird to me too.
Liz goes and says bye to Regina. They cry. She tells her to bring her scrapbook. She sneaks the letter in.
Nothing to see here.
We get the carnival.
We're talking about who we're voting for this stupid fucking Centennial thing that no one could possibly care about.
Oh, Liz encourages everyone to vote for Bruce, and she tells everyone how Bruce has really changed, and she tells them the whole story. She tells everyone, even though she doesn't like to gossip, she tells them the whole thing that happened.
And then everyone's like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't vote already because now I'm going to vote for Bruce instead of Ken.
Bruce wins. Sky Morrow makes a nice speech about disabilities and her child.
Regina's on the plane. She's feeling a little lonely, so she goes to the scrapbook. She sees the letter.
She says, what a fool I've been. She cries. He still loves me.
She puts the pendant back on.
Again, we get the sort of palindrome. He loves me enough to sacrifice his own happiness for my welfare.
I just would love love that doesn't require quite so much sacrifice. Couldn't it be easy? I guess it wouldn't be books then.
Jessica gets her term paper back, and she gets a D that Lila wrote. And she's pissed at Lila about the bad term paper grade, and she's annoyed because she got rejected from Donald. So we learned that Donald sent Jessica a nice letter saying, I don't want to lead you on. Thanks for inviting me to Carnival, but see you later. And that inspires her to start plotting and getting a little interested in Lila's new crush called Jack.
Yeah.
Which takes us to cliffhanger.
So Lila goes to her father's secretary. She's going to go meet up with Jack or try to find Jack.
Basically, she
goes to find Jack. I guess.
And she tells him, you should come over and swim at my pool. And he says, okay.
And then because she's there, she has to go talk to her dad. So Lila felt as if she was floating on air as she opened the door to her father's office. She had no idea what excuse she could give for visiting him. All she knew was that she was falling head over heels in love, and that she had to wait until Sunday before she got to see her mysterious prince again. Will Jack destroy Lila and Jessica's friendship? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 19, Showdown. Thoughts? 1, I love the premise of calling a book Showdown. I love a showdown between Jess and Lila. I think it's interesting that we're framing it as will this destroy their friendship when it's like their friendship is like brittle in the first place.
Do you have any predictions for Showdown?
I think I'm worried that Jack is going to turn out to be a secret millionaire who's like on a gap year from his parents before college or something kind of like Thoroughly Modern Millie, where he's like trying to learn how poor people live, so he's working on this construction for a little bit.
He's like undercover boss.
He's like undercover boss baby, basically. And I think Lila and Jess are going to fight over, and then I think the very special lesson that they're going to learn is that no boy is worth their friendship, even though their friendship sucks and they actually hate each other. That's my guess.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Should we stop recording?
We should stop recording.
Okay, I have a couple questions not related to the podcast. One is,
Okay.
Are you up to date on Survivor?
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.